Thanks, Michael, and thanks, Greg, as always, for the time. I got two questions. The first of which is, who out of this group has impressed you in this camp? And the second, with regards to Ricardo specifically, I think we all know there was a lot on his mind in November with his club, with the national team, with playing against Mexico in a World Cup qualifier for the first time. And I wonder what you saw from him sort of on the mental side then, and whether you've been able to have, conversations with him in this camp about how he's doing in that respect.
Yeah, I have had conversations with him, and what I'd say is that I'm really impressed with how he's handling all this. 18 years old, to be the starting striker for the U.S. national team is a big responsibility. Also with all these rumors going around about clubs and this and that, and he's handled it really well. He's focused on getting better each and every day on the training pitch and using every opportunity on the field to have a good game. And so, again, really impressed the way he's handled it, and I think that bodes well for his future to be able to handle pressure in situations like this, uncertainty. In terms of the camp, what I'd say is, in general, the guys have been a pleasure to work with. From day one, it was about just learning and improving. I think we have 8 or 9 guys that have never been involved in camp before, and giving them that experience, and the older guys helping the younger guys along. So that's been really impressive from the whole group. When I think about standouts, without getting into too much detail, I'd say that, Brooks Lennon's done a good job. Henry Kessler's done a good job. Some of the newer faces that come to mind.
Next will be Ryan Talmadge from Goal.com.
Greg, like you said there, is that there's a lot of guys who are getting a chance, whether they're new guys or whether they're guys who've been working years for it. And I'm sure that's one of the joys of your job is kind of getting to see those guys get those chances, because I'm sure you remember what that moment was like for you. So just on a personal level, what is this camp like for you? Obviously, look, it's serious work and you're preparing for something, but do you kind of enjoy getting the chance to see these guys get those moments where they can kind of sink or swim like this?
Yeah, I think it's a nice challenge for the guys. You aspire to something your whole career, and then you get the opportunity. It's nice to see how the players embrace that. I talked to them before the camp, and you might have seen this on the Behind the Crest video, but talking about we wanting to expand the player pool, and that's our wants, but it's up to them to show that we need to do it and to take advantage of their opportunity. And you don't always get that, but what I'd say is the guys have worked hard. They've been eager. Some of the younger guys, they may not be exactly ready for a national team call-up, but they've been coping with it well and holding their own. So all that has been really positive. And now it's about how do we finish a year in a good way with a good performance against Bosnia.
Next will be Sam Stejskal from The Athletic.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Greg. Hope you guys are both doing well. Greg, I wanted to ask about two guys that have been with the national team quite a bit in their careers, but are coming back after long injuries, in Aaron and Jordan. What do they look like? I know Jordan, obviously, he got some time with the Sounders before, but how are they shaking off the rust? And then how do you evaluate tomorrow in terms of how much you can really take out of a game like that, just considering the circumstances and the opponent and the fact that they're bringing a young, untested team as well?
Yeah, the first evaluation is, are we seeing what we've been focusing on during the week, right? How is that? How's the effort? How's the intensity? And then do we win the game? Those are 3 measuring sticks that are pretty clear. So that will be, good for us to be able to take a look at. In terms of Aaron and Jordan, Aaron he came into camp without having a full team session, and he's worked his way into full team sessions, and he's looked great. Really impressed with his rehab and how he's got himself to this point. I'm not sure he'd be able to play fully in the game tomorrow, but he's certainly well on his way to being able to play in a game. So that's great news. Regarding Jordan, he's looked sharp the entire time. We knew that he had a long layoff. He got back into it with Seattle, and they've done a great job of getting him back to a good point. He looks fit. He looks sharp. Really looking forward to him performing tomorrow.
Next will be Scott French.
Hey, Greg. I want to get your thoughts on Kobe Henry and what you've seen from him.
He's been okay. He's one of the guys I referenced, like 17 years old, not necessarily ready for a senior call-up, but still holding his own in training, great attitude, great mindset. Any struggle that he has, he just brushes off and goes at it the next day. So I think he's a player with a bright future.
Next will be Ivis Galarcep.
Greg, two for me. First, Brooks Lennon, you mentioned that he's one of the guys who's looking in camp. Now, you've wanted to bring him in the past, and, for whatever reason, for different circumstances, you couldn't bring him in. He's shown a lot of growth on the defensive side of his game as he's adapted to playing right back. What have you thought of what you've seen in camp and that evolution and the position? And my second question is regarding this winter. A lot of U.S. national team players are facing kind of uncertain futures. They might be transfers. As a coach, how do you kind of manage your involvement or your input in that? Because especially with the World Cup year, and a lot of these guys are some of your key guys, how do you kind of strike that balance where providing input and maybe not getting too involved? How do you handle that?
Well, I'm happy to be here for a sounding board for any player that wants advice, and that's how I see my role. A lot of that stuff, obviously, is noise, and really all the player can control is his effort in training, his performance in the game, and all the rest, is background, and that's what we try to focus on with the guys, even with our team. Regarding Brooks, he's a guy that, you can tell he's played the amount of games in Major League Soccer that he has. He has that experience to him, even though he's a young player. And that's fun to see in the fullback position. I think he's a solid fullback. He's done a good job in camp, really embracing the ideas, the concepts, has done a good job of that. And, he's going to start the game tomorrow. I'm really excited to see how he performs.
Next will be Michael DeCourcy.
Greg, happy holidays to you.
Thank you, Michael.
I wanted to ask about the timing of this, especially for guys like Ricardo and others who play in MLS. You play this game, then you don't get back into the window till the end of January, so there's that long layoff. How does this game help them to be sharp, and what do they do if they, presuming no move to Europe or whatever, but just for those guys who are MLS, how do they stay sharp for that next window?
Yeah, so if you work back, Michael, from the end of the season, the end of the regular season, some guys had a brief period, or some guys went right into international window, played the November window, and then had some time off, and then are back into this camp. So they had about 2.5 weeks off before this camp started. And the whole idea is to keep the guys moving, specifically guys in Major League Soccer. Even if they went in the playoff run and were eliminated, they had a little bit of time off. So we think that time off is good for them to recharge and relax a little, but we still have to keep them going physically. So when you look at this camp, that's the emphasis of the game tomorrow, keeping our core guys like Walker Zimmerman, him playing 90 minutes tomorrow is important. And, Ricardo Pepe is another guy. So keeping these guys moving, it will be important for us. And then we have another 3 weeks off where they have a program to do, and then we get back into camp. So even though the window starts end of January, we're in camp on January 6th again. So we're hitting the ground running, and we'll be a very similar focus, because if we want to compete like we do in this window, it's going to be essential to have these guys fit.
Next will be Sanjay Sujan Thakumar.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks, Greg.
Hey, Sanjay.
Greg, two-part question. First about the left backs. What have you seen from Jonathan and Kevin when he was there? And what's that competition been like with George? And where do you see George right now in terms of competing with those younger guys while also trying to make the qualifying roster, competing with someone like Sam as well? And then also, what are you seeing in the midfield from Taylor Booth and Caden Clark? Taylor was listed as a forward, but he mentioned he's been working as an 8. How's he look there? And where do you see Caden fitting in right now? Do you see his chance with the full group breaking in there? Would that be as a winger or as a midfielder? Thank you.
So Kevin was in camp and playing as a winger. He was coming back from his slight injury. We didn't really want to push him so much at the fullback position, so we put him at winger. He looked good while he was in camp. In terms of the left back, George has done a good job. He's been strong in training. He'll start the game tomorrow as well, and he's a guy that that has really developed, I think, over this last year. Regarding Jonathan, it's been great having him in camp. He's another player that is still maturing physically, still growing, but a really good competitor, technically good player, very competitive. It's been great working with him. We haven't had the chance so far, but it's been really nice. And the left back position has been, has been tough with Anthony Robinson doing a great job. Sammy Vines is playing now, so there is competition in that spot. When I look at Caden and Taylor, I think they're both slightly different players. I think Caden is more of a arrive in the penalty box, between the lines, maybe brief moment type of guy where he just arrives and makes something happen, makes a play, where Taylor's more of a guy that wants to influence the rhythm of the game. And both those guys, it's been fun seeing them, and two young players again, and I think both have good futures.
Next would be Claudia Costarina.
Thank you. Hi, Greg.
Hey,
You are,
Claudia.
of course, thinking ahead already, preparing for what's to come in January. You were at the bank to observe El Salvador against Chile. What are you hoping for in this game tomorrow as part of those preparations?
So in terms of the tactical exercise, it's it's not, you really can't compare what we're going to face in January to what we're going to face tomorrow. So I think the exercise is more of a physical exercise. How do we keep guys moving? How do we play at a high speed? We want to be able to maintain high speeds in the game and keep the tempo high, keep the intensity high, because we know that's what a World Cup qualifier is going to be like.
Next would be Ron Blum from the Associated Press.
Hi, Greg. How are you?
Hey, Ron.
Hey, you talked about a few weeks ago, a bunch of players needed time off, and that's why they weren't picked here. Looking at the core group you want to keep moving for January, who are the people who you expect, who you gave off to come back for that game?
That's a good question. Certainly we're going to have conversations with Miles and Paul Areola and Sebastian Leggett. There may be some other guys. But it's really going to be up to them and how they're looking and how fit they are. Again, we can't risk, having guys that aren't fully able to play 90 minutes at high intensity for this window, especially when if we're earmarking them as starters. So it's going to be important that we use the time between camps to assess, and then in camp to really work with these guys and make sure they're at the levels that we need.
We'll go to Brian Sciaretta.
Thank you very much, Greg, for doing this. I want to ask you about two players from Colorado that are on the. They obviously had a very good season. They surpassed a lot of people's expectations, both the players and the team. Cole Bassett and Austin Trustee. These two players have, they're in camp with you, and they're not regulars with the team. But how have they done in this camp? What have you seen from them, and what have you seen from them this season that got them to this point?
I think they both had excellent seasons, as you mentioned. Austin was rock solid in the back, and Cole, a very interesting player, arriving in the box, getting his goals, getting his assists, technically very good player. So it was nice to come in and see them at our level, and I think they've done well. They're both not going to start the game tomorrow, but we can potentially get them on the field and see what they can do in action in a full international. But I think both of them. Austin we worked with in 2019, and we can see that he's made strides since then. And Cole was in briefly in December camp, and he's another player that you can sense he's more confident and able to execute at a higher level now.
Next will be Har from the Daily Hive in Vancouver.
Hi, Greg. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us this afternoon. I'm up in Vancouver, as Michael mentioned. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about Brian White. He had a tremendous season with the Whitecaps, led the team in goals. What do you see from him, and does he need to work on anything in order to maybe get a call up or get invited to a camp? Thank you.
Yeah, he was on the prelim roster, and it was a tough decision not to include him. When we're looking at training and our depth chart at striker, in this particular camp, we had Jossie Zardes, Jesus Ferreira, and Ricardo Pepi. And, we saw pretty much a log jam at the striker position, and therefore he wasn't included. But he's a guy I've been impressed with, and I can guarantee you if he continues the type of form that he had last season and continues to perform well at a high level, he'll get a call up sooner rather than later.